This episode is supported by MonsterJoysticks.com. Level up your Raspberry Pi with our all-in-one arcade kits featuring genuine Sandware arcade parts.
Hello and welcome to The Cave. I've got a very special guest here today. It's Stephen Jones, who you saw in the recent A1500 history video that we had in The Cave. And Stephen's just popped in to pick up the A1500, which he very kindly lent us for the video. And I thought I'd grab him for a quick Q&A to answer some Patreon questions, of which we had a few. And also I've picked out some questions from the comments section of that video. So Stephen, thank you for taking the time to join us.
Thanks, I'm back in a cave. It's a treat.
And I hope you enyed the video.
I did. It was really good, and I'm glad he took out some of my waffling to talk forever.
Yeah, I mean, it's a history that you've probably had a lot of time to mull over. It's been over 20 years.
Yes, and no one's known the story. I mean, it's, as I mentioned, it's coming out in the book, but no one really knows the true story, and everyone's kind of got this theory about how it happened. So it was nice to actually see it in a video.
And the book that you mentioned, that's
Dave Pleasance's new book. So please go out and buy it, because there's even more information about other things. But
is it out yet or not?
No, I think it's July. I mean, I'm not involved in the book, but I think it's pushed back to July. He's been waiting for RJ Michael, which is obviously important. But
do you think we'll get a bit more of an insight into the A1500 in that book?
There is maybe a little bit more, but there's other things I was involved in.
Okay.
So there's other projects. I mean, it goes into some other bits and pieces that I did. Some went well, some didn't go so well. A bit about Gateway 2000.
Okay.
So there's quite a bit in there about that, which is a story in its own.
Sure. Okay, but today we're talking about your project, the A1500 Plus, your baby here, which is slightly different to the one I had in the video, because is this the V2?
No, this is the V1, but I've got rid of those ugly black panels in the front and that 5 1/4 drive, and I've actually got some nice looking 3.5 inch drive floppy for the Amiga and a slot loading CD-ROM.
But this isn't the finished
No, this is not.
Still
No,
3D
this
printed.
is still 3D printed. Unfortunately, I was going to show it today at a meeting I went to today, but it was supposed to arrive Wednesday.
Oh, okay.
And we can't make it in time, so it's been rolled back, and I'm getting it next week. Still waiting for that.
Good. Well, we've got plenty of questions, so we'll start with the first one, which is from Patreon Chrissy. And Chrissy says, will the case have the option to fit an HXC floppy emulator with the screen and buttons visible? I know I use an HXC.
Yeah, which is the GoTech.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
There's one of these panels has been designed.
Let me grab the GoTech that's here.
Yeah, one of these panels has been designed with a standard cutout, which is the front. So anything that is that particular size will just slide in and fit, and there's mounting holes for it.
Yeah, so it's just the front panel. This is in an old external case, so
yes,
you'll just have
and
this.
it all fits inside nicely. Yeah.
But you've got quite a lot of flexibility on what you can do with these panels.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, if something superseded this, it wouldn't necessarily make your case out of date. You could just 3D print a different panel.
The other important thing is that when the Kickstarter is released. And once it's all completed, I'm going to release all the drawings, the latest drawings for the entire project, so that if you actually want to make something for it, that you can have the exact designs and have the dimensions. If you're a Chinese manufacturer that want to clone it, please talk to me first. So I'm going to release it so that people can then modify it, which is going to maybe help with a later question.
Okay. Next question was asked by various people, and they said, what colour will it be? Because we saw the mixed coloured panels on the video. So will it be this white, or what colour will the final product be?
So at the moment there's two colours. There's this black, which is a powder coated black. It's a silky kind of black, and that'll be the same for the front. There is another colour which is called oyster white, but if you search for a RAL colour range and look for number 1013, that's the colour for the front. And that was done we did a poll on that, lots of colours, and everyone had a choice, and that came out at the top. Okay. So that's an oyster white. So we wanted to get the retro colour, but not...
How does it compare to, say, this colour here?
That is a very good question. I have a funny feeling this might be similar.
Okay.
But if you go online and search RAL colour palettes, they're all up there. You can see exactly the colour.
Yeah. So it'd be quite authentic to those original Amigas. Yeah.
Yeah. There was someone mentioned about, can we have it yellow so they can retro bright it. This bit may get removed, but I thought it was funny. But so that may be an option. I don't know.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. Morzu Hammer says, what plans do you have for an external keyboard? Because obviously on the original, this is the A500 keyboard transplanted into this case.
Yeah.
Do you have any plans for this to be able to use an original keyboard? Do you think people would want to use an original keyboard?
This is a bigger subject than the case. So initially when we first brought this one out, we made an aluminium case for the front. So this was made from steel and this is aluminium to keep the weight down. We will be doing the same thing again. So if you've got a 500, the reason is it has on board, it has electronics for the keyboard with a cable that we can patch. With the 1200 and the 600, they rely on plugging straight into the motherboard. It's a bit more tricky, so I can't promise for that. However, there are many beautiful mechanical keyboards. In fact, if you search for vintage mechanical keyboards, you'll find this beautiful keyboard, which I think is almost perfect for the Amiga, and it will slide underneath we'll come back to that. But it's got the colour scheme beautiful. The only thing is those horrible Windows keys, which we can throw them away. And there's a gentleman in Italy that manufactures keycaps, so we can get a couple of keycaps with Amiga.
That's a nice finish.
And it's actually, but then it's a beautiful mechanical. It's actually better than the original Amiga keyboard. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
But they are really beautiful.
There was a mechanical keyboard for the 500, the early versions.
Yes, I don't have one, but thanks for making me jealous.
I've had two cross my path and neither of them have been able to get to work, so I've got a bag full of keycaps from them, and I'm still trying to get hold of that mechanical keyboard, but I may not need to if I get one of these.
The important thing is the rise and the lift in the keyboard, because with these ones are full keyboard and these will not slide underneath. Like the 1000, we've made risers, two heights, 30mm, 45mm, and they'll lift this case up so you can slide a keyboard underneath, but it has to be, it's what's called a 10 keyless keyboard.
Yeah.
So basically, no number pad, okay? But then you can slide it under. If you don't want to, then don't put the risers on and you can just have it in front as normal.
So the risers are an optional extra?
They'll come free with it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw them in the case because they're not costing an awful lot to make. So I'll put them in there as standard. Yeah. I did think about making it as a stretch goal, but I think that's just being tight. But so these will go in there, so you can put them on or not. It's up to you.
So
I like the slidey keyboard.
I like that A1000 like keyboard garage.
Yeah.
For me, it all depends on how high it is, whether it, the look.
So you can get some really nice slimline ones. So we've got the 30mm one, which is literally just over an inch.
Yeah.
And if you've got a nice slimline, you can slide that under beautifully, and it works great. If you want one, like I bought a big mechanical black keyboard to go with it, which glows red and everything. So I've got that, and then that needs the 43 or 45mm, I think it is.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Uri2, sorry if I'm saying that name wrong, but Uri2 on YouTube says, will there be a tower version of the new A1500 Plus, or even a stand so that you can make it vertical?
The tower module has been an interesting discussion on the Facebook group. It ranges from that's a stupid idea to that's a really cool idea. Yeah. The only thing was it was obviously designed as a desktop. And if you imagine getting a 3000, standing it up on end, yes, it's fine. You can do that.
I don't want to do that.
Funny enough, I got the DVD drive is a bit loose in there today. I've disconnected it, so that's it. That's fine.
There we go.
So you can see it would actually look like. In fact, people say it looks like a PS2. Because
like
of the grills.
Big PS2.
And if you put the monitor here, actually it would work quite well. We would have to make a little plastic holder that you can slot it into to support these drops. But technically, there's no reason why you can't do that. You need to really disguise it with a monitor, because on this side here are all the studs, with the multiple studs, which allow all the different motherboards. Now, when it's laying down, you don't see them, but as a tower, maybe you're going to see them. But I'm more inclined to think if this thing takes off and it does okay, I might design a tower case that people would like that's retro inspired.
There was an A2000 tower case. I don't know if it was an official Commodore product, but you could.
It wasn't an official one, but it was actually a very nicely modified. I believe it was an existing PC case. They modified the internals because we did one the same, and we did one with the 500 with a big Zorro backplane inside. I think they just did like we did and modified it. But yeah, the tower's an interesting idea. But again, it's really meant to be a desktop.
Something nice you told me earlier, which I didn't realise when I made the video, was this part here of the original A1500.
Yes.
So this could have ended
Can you
up
see
being
that?
higher.
So on the top of the case here, as you can probably see, I've got my hand in it. There is a slot holder, and it's got a blanking plate in it. Now, the reason for that was originally the internal of this case had a single 86-pin slot or a Zorro 100-pin slot. But of course, there'd be more power users that want to be able to use more. And the plan always was there would be a secondary case that sits on top, which will then have internal a connector that will connect into that, but then give you, for example, the CPU socket from the 2000, one or two more Zorro slots, and potentially a video slot. We did actually, although the video slot, actually we had an adapter that allowed you to use the flicker fixer in here.
Yeah.
So it did actually work in here. But this was something, unfortunately, because of what happened, and it didn't take off as big as we'd hoped, and then the Commodore saga, and so it never went that far. But to be honest, I think most people just love it the way it was, and I think did most of the things most people needed.
It's incredible that you could expand the A500 that much, that you could have a whole nother
crazy.
layer with all of those extra cards in there. It reminds me a little bit of the Acorn RISC PC. You could build up the slices, couldn't you? You could go like 7 high. Yeah.
I would like to mention for historical reasons, there was a product called Bodega Bay, which was out before us. It wasn't as pretty as this, but it was really functional, and you put your 500, it sat on top of the 500, it gave you 4 Zorro slots.
Okay.
It was very, and it had a big power supply inside. It was not the prettiest thing in the world, but it was really a great product.
Yeah.
It never came over here, but it kind of inspired the design of this to make the similar thing but prettier.
A few people mentioned Bodega Bay in the comments there.
I even show the because there was a review between my product and their product.
Oh, okay.
And Phil, he wasn't biased. He's a friend, and I've known Phil South. I've known for years, and we beat them slightly on score, but it was a great product. It was weighed about 4 ton, but it was great.
Okay. Jamie T, who's a patron, he's trying to be clever, and he says, "Will it run Crisis?" Now,
yes,
it will, won't it?
God, yeah.
It will.
As long as you don't want to run it on the Raspberry Pi on Amiga 500. But let's cover that then, because one of the reasons I built this machine was 2 reasons. I wanted to make it a really great looking Amiga system with an Amiga motherboard in it. But I also love virtual reality. And for those that don't know, the very first virtual reality system was called Virtuality. And what powered virtual reality was an Amiga 3000. Most people don't know that. So I wanted to make a new 3000 that could put in a GTX 1080, which I have sitting there, and an i7. And yes, I'm sorry, it's going to run Windows or Linux, but it will be able to run any VR application you can run it and put into it. And we've even got now an area for a water cooling system for the CPU to keep this case cool. So it's aimed at VR as well, but don't overclock it.
Yeah, I mean, tower cases are, they're everywhere. There's not so many desktop cases, so ignoring the whole Amiga element of this case, actually it's quite unique in that it's one of the few, or will be one of the few nice looking desktop cases that you can still get.
I also think that one of the side aims, my first concern was always Amiga users, and I wanted to make something for the Amiga users, and it's not just me being nice, it's the truth. But I also thought, well, at the moment this is a hobby, but in my head I think there is a market for a retro-inspired PC, Linux, Windows case. One that looks nice, and a desktop, because there aren't no desktops really. Something that people like the look of, a bit novel, and different to the the bland. No, I wouldn't say they're all bland, but some of the bland cases you get out there.
Yeah.
So that may turn this from a hobby project into something more, and that's depends if the PC crowd show interest in it.
Yeah.
Hence the water cooling.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they do. Yeah. Now, various people have made a comment on your meeting with Commodore, the one in which you screamed into the car park in your Porsche and your flash seat. And they've asked, do you think that meeting would have gone differently if it had happened with David Pleasance? Because who was it you had the meeting with?
Oh, it's always the interesting one. Was it Kieran or was it Kelly Sumner?
One of the
I think it
Sumners.
was Kieran because
Okay.
Dave said I think it was Kieran. I think I'll be careful what I say, but I think David Pleasance would have been better to deal with. I'd never met him to date. I've spoken to him, emailed to him and so on recently, and I've spoken to a lot of people who know him. And I've seen of it, and I actually do think he would have been a bit more. It would have been better meeting. The outcome may have been the same. I don't know because, but
Was
I
he
don't think
was he CEO at the time?
No,
or
he
in
was
a
in.
different position?
From what I understand, he was in Switzerland. He'd gone to Switzerland,
Right.
and so the Sumners had taken over.
Right, so it's not like it was his decision ultimately anyway. This
To my
was
knowledge, it
by the
wasn't, and I've
Sumners.
spoken to him. He didn't even know about it.
Yeah, okay.
I have no reason to doubt that.
So possibly different, but yeah.
They would be doing the sensible thing, looking after their company. My opinion was more a case of I was hoping to go along and discuss ways that we may be able to help them with more business oriented promotion, because we was having some success there. But they just saw me buying their cheap 500s and then undercutting their 2000s, which if I was in their boat, I would be probably exactly the same.
Yeah.
But there's an old saying about, keep people close and all that.
Yeah.
And I might have been
exactly.
slightly different.
There was some discussion on Reddit actually by some people who watched the video, and they were asking how was it legal for you to do what you were doing, because essentially you were just reselling Commodore's product. So was the workaround that you were actually selling the case and selling the Amiga pack, and then selling the engineers time to put them together after you'd sold them, or how did you work around that?
It's an interesting question, because the only thing that they might have been able to get upset about was the fact we put A1500, but since they didn't have a product in their range called the A1500, that was never going to be a problem.
And you had Acorn's A.
Exactly.
We
had the
range.
A3000, the
There were
A range.
lots of computers with an A range.
That was never the issue. The fact of us taking out, we bought a legitimate pack. And repurposed it, just like you may go out and you might buy it and you might put a hard drive controller in it and a floppy disk drive on it, or put a shelf on it. We did take it apart and use it as components. From our advice was there is not an issue. I think it was more the point from them was not the fact that we was doing anything illegal. It's just the fact that we was buying a cheap motherboard from them for very low cost, and then undercutting their professional end massively.
Because you weren't passing this off as your own computer.
No.
You were selling it as an Amiga in your own case.
Absolutely. And everyone knew that we was, when we advertised it was, supply an Amiga, or we'll supply a pack and we'll build it for you. So.
Yeah, so good, that answers that. And given the way that Commodore treated you, did you take any pleasure from the eventual downfall of Commodore? No.
No, oh God, I get emotional. No, because some people have asked me that in the past, and no, I never did. I was as upset as everyone else when the company went bust. And I mean, I've spoken to like Newtek and so on, and their entire business was based on the Amiga, and people don't understand how big a deal it was. And so for Commodore to go bust, I mean, what would I like to do to Mediale? Well, I mean, there's a few Amigas might want to send in suggestions, but the actual company going down, no, I was as upset as anyone else. I really was upset because I'd based my future, my family's future on the whole Amiga.
Yeah, and you did go on to continue selling Amiga-based products.
Yeah, for some time
after the A1500.
Yeah, and I did a few other things.
What sort of products were you selling?
So, big complicated to go into subject now, but I did one fun thing I did. There was a market for people who were buying 1200s and they wanted a bigger, beefier power supply, but they were also buying CD-ROM drives with SCSI interfaces. So I did this thing called the Power Station. It was basically I bought a PC case. I made a cable an adapter that came from the power supply into the 1200, and it was all nice and neat. You plugged it in. And then you sold them a secret squirrel, a high-soft squirrel. Keep that in. It's a high-soft squirrel. And then in the case, we mounted CD-ROM, hard drive, all kinds of things in the case. The case sold, I shouldn't do it. Well, yeah, I will. I bought for about £20 in parts and sold for £100.
Nice.
But we always sold CD-ROM Drive Squirrel.
Yeah.
I was Highsoft's biggest fan. You know, they loved me
Yeah.
because I was buying loads of these squirrels. And we saw I made more money doing that than anything else in the Amiga business. It was fantastic. So that was one thing. And another one I did think was Siamese system, which I don't know if you've heard of, but which basically enabled you to, in that same case, why not put a PC motherboard in with Windows? Because people still needed to use Windows.
Yeah.
So the idea was that we had a video switcher made, and it went in the PC case and was powered by ISA. And then you plug the Amiga's video into it, and we plugged the serial and parallel ports into it, and there was software. So basically, you'd have this complete system here. You'd be working on the Amiga, and then you I need to go on a browser. Even then, it was a problem, the browser. So you do an Amiga M, flick to the PC, Windows would be there. You'd open up the browser and do your work, but you were still using the same keyboard and mouse. Okay, so it was a seamless integration. Now this moved on later on that we wrote a retargeting system, which basically means it was basically a remote desktop many years ago. The Amiga's Windows would appear on the Windows display, and the sound would retarget through that as well. This culminated later on in when Gateway took over. Gateway 2000 took over. I had a meeting with Mick Tinker. And this is probably not so well known, but Mick Tinker turned up with a board, and it was a PCI card with a 6840 processor on it. And he said, I've got something to show you. Now, he knew we did the retargeting. You'll have to look up Siamese Systems and Amiga to see more information about it. Instantly, I knew, hang on a second, that's fantastic. Now, Gateway 2000 were very interested. And they wanted to put this card with our software in all of their PCs, running Macintosh software, so you could run Windows, Macintosh, and if you wanted to, Amiga, because Amiga wasn't a big thing to them.
So it was a 68040 on a PCI card. Did it have any of the other custom Amiga chips?
Just the 6840, because for retargeting system, we didn't need to have all the graphics because there was a lot of retargeted applications on the Amiga. But the reality was, I was thinking long end, where we could the next version with the chips.
Yeah.
But I knew that they wanted the Macintosh emulator, because at that time you was allowed to run a Macintosh emulator. Steve Jobs came back later and killed that. Yeah. But that was still the potential. So they saw it as Windows and Mac software on their high-end machines, and it would be faster than the equivalent Mac, as you've proved.
Yeah.
And then later on, we would pursue it further with the operating system. And at that point, I wanted to then move the operating system to x86. Unfortunately, it became clear they just wanted the patents.
Yeah.
And they pulled the plug. Everything went pear-shaped. And that's...
Sounds like a good story to be told on another day, the Siamese system.
Yes.
I'd certainly like to look into that.
Yes.
And it's interesting thinking back, you forget there was that time when it was so uncertain. Was it going to be the Apple Mac? Was it going to be the PC?
Yeah.
Was it going to be the Amiga that took the lead? You kind of miss that competition. Don't you?
It was a lot more fun than it is now.
Yeah. Okay, that's all the questions we've had from YouTube, from Reddit, from the patrons. All that's left to ask really is, how do we follow this? How do we know when the Kickstarter is going to go live and see what you're up to with it? Okay,
so you may know I have a Facebook group. I'm sure you'll put the links in the video, but I have a Facebook group, which I've set the Facebook group up so people can follow the trials and tribulations of development and to build a community, obviously, because then I can say Kickstarter.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was interesting. And to be fair, the feedback's been fantastic, because you wouldn't have had 5 1/4 drive bays if it hadn't been for Briel, who nagged me into putting a 5 1/4 drive, and it was genius idea. So that group's been really helpful, and that's if you search on Facebook for Checkmate A1500 Plus, and you just join the group, and then you can find out all about that. I have a website, but again, you can link to that. The Kickstarter, fingers crossed, the final prototype will arrive next week, and if all goes well, then I'll be preparing the video and preparing everything for the Kickstarter, and I hope by the end of July or sometime in August to launch the Kickstarter. Probably 6 months, 9 months I will quote for delivery, but in theory maybe early, because all I'm doing is making the molds for this. Everything else is ready to go. It's just the molds.
All solid back here.
It's all done. It's ready to manufacture. So even the boards, the internal boards, everything's ready to manufacture. It's just literally making the molds for this. But I don't want to get into this position where I quote a time, as Scotty used to say, double your time. And then you'll look like a miracle worker. So I'm hoping that so it may be quicker than the Kickstarter, but I will obviously set a time.
Well, I'm glad you've gone with Kickstarter rather than something like Indiegogo, because you have to have the finished product, don't you? Essentially, up to the point where you need that extra bit of cash to get the mold. So it's not going to vanish into thin air or anything like that. So I'm looking forward to the Kickstarter. I'll make a community notice on YouTube to pop up just to let you guys know if you're not following the Facebook group or whatever. And you've also got a YouTube channel, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Do you know the name of it?
Yes, but it's a really silly name. It won't mean anything for this. It's Cluster UK Developments, with an S on the end. And because I was really into clustering, I wanted to build parallel computers and stuff.
Okay.
And I just like the name.
Okay, I'll put a link to that in the description below. And you can see Stephen playing with his A3000, his A1000.
All of them.
This is a lot of Amiga content beside this case, so do check it out. Stephen, thank you again for taking part in the original video and sharing your story with us. And on behalf of Amigans for creating this case, because I know a lot of people are very excited about it. So, Stephen, thanks very much.
Thank you.
And
thanks for the enthusiasm. Everyone, it's been fantastic.
Thanks very much for watching, guys, and take care.
Thank you again for watching. If you enjoyed this content, then please do check out the Patreon link to support the cave, just like all of these people scrolling up the screen now. You'll find links to find out more about Stephen's Kickstarter project in the video description. I should also make you aware I'm in no way associated with the project, nor is this a paid promotion. I'm just an excited Amigan who's looking forward to seeing the case finished. Thanks for watching.